Today is my first review of how does the film compare to the book. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. On this channel we post writing tips, unboxings, book hauls, book reviews and the occasional vlog. Dune by Frank Herbert is a science fiction book from the 1960s. I have recently done a book review on this. If you haven't seen that, the link is above and below this video. I also went to see the film as soon as it came out. I had to see what they had done with this book. I wasn't disappointed. First of all, the general plot of Dune is a book of betrayal, of amazing character arcs, a fantastical world. It's about the royal family of Atreides moving from Canadan, a planet full of water. It's beautiful, it's lovely. They are forced to move by the Emperor to steward the world of Arrakis, a desert, barren planet which survives solely by selling spice, which is a hallucinogenic drug. They are unable to do interstellar travel without spice. So it's a very wealthy planet if you can survive on it. The planet is barren, there is no water, and there are giant worms which, if you have a rhythmic sound, anything that doesn't sound like sand, they will eat you and your machines and just everything and anything. You cannot use your shields as the thump of that will attract the worms. On Arrakis, there are other Fremen, a native desert people who are adept to living life in this desert. They wear still suits to collect water from their bodies, and they have been trying for generations to collect enough water to make Arrakis a habitable green planet. The Atreides are put in power over the Harkonnens, who are made to leave because the Emperor is scared because the Harkonnens have too much money. He is afraid of House Atreides because they have a son, so the Emperor wants to create a rivalry, which he does. The Harkonnens are pissed off with the Atreides for taking their planet, which has made them so rich. The Emperor works with the Harkonnens to fight the Atreides, for the Harkonnens to move back to Arrakis to then destroy themselves, basically. The film goes from book 1 about halfway through book 2 of Dune. So that's in this version here. So it is about Paul and Jessica, his mother, who's a Bene Gesserit, moving from Canadan to Arrakis. The Harkonnens attack, they end up in the desert, and it ends when they meet the Fremen. Personally, I think it was a good place to end. If you've seen my book review, I mentioned how I was concerned of where they will stop the film, because if they stopped it at the end of book 1, in my opinion, it wouldn't work. It's only just started. Book 1 is basically to world build and introduce the characters. So the whole plot and the intrigue doesn't fully come into fruition until book 2. You need the betrayals and the assassinations and things like that for the film to work. So I definitely liked where they ended it. The music of Dune was divine. If you don't know, I'm in a band called Wooden Elephants. The music under this video is a cover we did of Paul's Dream theme from Dune. If you want to see the video of that, the link is above me now. My partner did a little music video for it, but Hans Zimmer did such a good job of the music in Dune. It is not like anything you've ever heard in a movie really before. It doesn't follow making generic themes. It basically has a slight theme throughout, and it uses a lot of sound design in there. There's a constant flow of sand in the music, which is very, very interesting. I am a freelance sound designer in my spare time, so I very much appreciate that. The sound design in the actual film as well is fantastic. How they did the Bene Gesserit's voice was wonderful. At one point it made me jump because it's just so spooky and intimidating and really makes you want to do what they say. The actors were very well chosen, which was fantastic, and just a very good job in terms of the filming throughout. I have a lot of pros for this film and how it compared to the book, as well as obviously a few cons. Now, one thing that it does, which pretty much all adaptations do when they go from book to film, is they drop a lot of scenes. In the film, you do not see the dinner party, which is quite sad because the dinner party really develops certain characters, especially Kaya, who is the ecologist who is sent from the Emperor to live on the planet and to act as the middle ground during the takeover from Harkonnens to the Atreides family. I missed that. It also doesn't go into the belief that that Jessica could be the traitor in the household. It just kind of leaves it blank, like there's no betrayal going on at all until it happens. You don't get the garden scene, which is quite an interesting one when Jessica finds the Ben Gesserit secret message on the plant stem. So you lose bits of that. In the desert, Paul and Jessica don't have the near-death experience where they lose their belongings under the sand dune. Jessica is buried. In all book-to-film adaptations, they remove something, and those are some of the scenes that you will not see in the film that are in the books, which a lot of people may be disappointed in because they are very interesting and important scenes. However, they do manage to make the film work without them. One thing I am really interested in, if you are one of these people, please comment down below because I really want to know, how much did you understand from the film? Now, when I watched the film, because I'd read the book, I knew what was going on, I knew what was going to happen, but I also knew all the back stories, all the subplots that were going on at the same time. I didn't need all the information, but because so much is missing out, I am intrigued to see how much you know if you haven't read the book. How much did the film make sense? What subplots did you find? How much do you know about the various different characters? Going into the characters, Hawat the Mentat is barely used in this. Now in book one, he is very, very important to Paul and Jessica and Leto, and yet in the film, he's barely anything. And it doesn't explain anything about the Mentat, which I really hope becomes a thing, because you don't see him die in the film. I hope it becomes a thing in the second film, which there definitely is going to be one. Another character who disappears at the end is Gurney. We know from the book he is alive and he will meet him with the Fremen after he joins the black market trade of spice. But again, you don't see much of him other than that he's a fighter and a poet. You don't even see him play his balisette, which personally I didn't mind. They mention the balisette. Paul, during the sword lesson, asks, I'm not feeling it today. Do you just want to play me a song instead? And obviously Gurney refuses and says, you don't fight when you feel like fighting, you fight when you need to fight. That is sort of a brief overall. Now, let's go into a little bit more about the rhyme from the book. If you saw my book review, I will have already read this to you, but just in case you haven't, I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. I loved how in the film they made that very important. Jessica repeats it, I think, twice through the film, but in very extreme circumstances. The only thing I found disappointing with it was Paul never said it, making it seem like Jessica was weaker because she had to remind herself of this because she cried, whereas Paul barely ever cried. He cries once, which was a little bit frustrating for me, but I'm glad they had that in there because, as I say, that is a very important part of the book. In my book review, I mentioned how I personally feel the book is a bit sexist. Written in the 1960s, it is expected. It is not as sexist as books written in that time period, and therefore it is quite modern, but it is still lacking in terms of women being fighters, of women and men just being equal and just getting on with it. The film does the same. All of the background Fremen are male. Chani is the only female amongst the Fremen when they find Paul and Jessica. Jessica fights and beats Stilgar, and yet still obviously Paul fights the general fight. There is one woman in the scene where the generals meet up. The rest are guys. It's the same as always. I had hoped when I read the book that more of the teachers would be female. They do change one character. They change Cal, the ecologist, which I did really appreciate. However, in the film, Cal comes across as a very nice person, neutral. In the book, Cal hates upon everyone at first sight, literally hates anyone unless you're a Fremen, doesn't give a shit and is quite brutal. Why is it they turned that character female and then they have a heart? It's an attempt, but I think they could have done better personally. Even if it was just some more of the Fremen in the background weren't obviously male. Just something. I think if they were going to follow through with all of the character arcs and all of the subplots, Dune really needs to be a TV series rather than a film. There is too much in there. I sort of compared it to Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings was a fantastic adaptation of the book. Like Dune, they missed a lot from the book out, but the film was fantastic. But I think part of the reason for that is Lord of the Rings is such a simple plot, whereas Dune has so many subplots in it and so many character arcs, so much betrayal, that it's impossible to put all of them into a movie. They have to pick and choose. And I think in terms of picking and choosing, they did do a really good job with the ones they have chosen. The graphics of Dune are wonderful. It's amazing. The machinery and also the sheer size is done so well. When Paul is stood against the harvester, you really feel the weight of that harvester. You can see the enormity of the technology, which I really love. The worms are fantastic, though I don't know if anyone else has thought this, but I have a bad brain. Do they kind of look like the tip of a flaccid penis? I'm just a bit sick-minded, I know. What they did with the Harkonnen Baron was fantastic. I loved how he came across as so brutal and evil and yet unable to support himself. They got the gluttonous characteristic. I don't quite understand when Duke Leto uses the poison tooth. The Baron hides up at the ceiling. Surely poison rises in the air, but we'll let that one slide. Another thing that is done very well is Paul's visions. Paul is becoming the Muad'Dib. He can see into the future, but all the way through, the visions Paul has are different, and they show many different futures, which shows how the future is not concrete, and also how Paul struggles with it, because at some point he sees himself die. At some points he sees Idaho live if Paul is with him at the time. He even sees the Fremen that he dies with him, teaching him the Fremen ways, and yet we obviously know how the story goes, and that's not what happens. I think they did that very, very well. They maybe did too many references to just Chani stood in the desert being pretty. We kind of know Chani's there by this point. We don't need so many of that. I know I'm taking a bit of a back foot to this. It is, in my opinion, a very faithful adaptation to the book. Would I say if you watch the film, then you don't need to read the book? No. I think it is a fantastic film. It is a very good sci-fi, and it's set a really high bar for science fiction movies from this point on. The graphics alone are something you need to strive for now in science fiction. The music is perfect. The sound design is on point. But it has to miss out so much from Dune because of how many subplots and characterizations there are in the book, that the film cannot possibly go into all that it needs to show all of this. So I think if you enjoy Dune the movie, you should definitely read the book so you get a better understanding of the world, which makes you appreciate the movie even more in some ways, because you can see all of that in the background that's not said. Marks out of 10 for the movie, I would give Dune as a movie by itself a 10 out of 10. I would definitely recommend seeing it. As an adaptation from a book, I would give it a 9 out of 10, only because it is disappointing to miss some of those scenes which come across as so vital in the book. But I do also understand from a cinematic point of view why those scenes were dropped. I think that if you like the film, you should definitely read the book to see the character arcs and the histories and the world building that was missed from Dune. However, we haven't seen Dune 2 yet, and there is definitely going to be a second movie, so it will be interesting how many of those character developments they can bring into the second movie. A thing that I actually thought the film did better than the book was the death of Cal. The ecologist in the book dies by basically being captured by the Harkonnens, tortured, and then left in the desert to die. Dies in the sun, sinks into the sand. I really enjoyed how in the movie Cal dies as they are about to ride a worm. They help Paul and Jessica escape. They are going to report the Harkonnens. It would tell them the Sudoku are involved, and therefore the Emperor is meddling in the house's business. But they are shot in the back. But not only do they die then, they take the Sudoku out with them and they tell them where their loyalties are. Cal is supposed to be loyal to the Emperor, but at the end they are only loyal to the worms, to the Fremen, to Arrakis, and they kill Saduka as they are all taken by a worm. It is a beautiful moment. And thank you guys so much for watching. If you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you'd like to see as soon as I upload, click that little bell down below. You can also follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram or Tumblr. I post bookish pictures as well as my writing tips and unboxings on there. If you haven't seen the book review of Dune, the link is above me now. It's also below this video. If you haven't seen Dune, definitely go and see it. It is worth the watch. If you watch it and you want to know more, read the book. And thanks for watching, guys. Bye.